and welcome to Finextra. I'm Hannah Wallace and we're here at EBAday 2018 in Munich. Joining me now is George Evers of Vocalink, and we're going to be discussing the global impact of real-time payments. Hello George, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
How are you enjoying the event so far?
It's been excellent. I mean, as ever, kind of a very good and relevant agenda. I think good attendance. It's one of the events of the year.
Now, coming back to real-time payments, since the launch of faster payments a decade ago, how has the demand for real-time payments increased around the globe?
So, I mean, let's kind of start with faster payments in the system. So it is still kind of the fastest growing payment system in the UK. I think our volumes were up last year about 16%, so it's still growing really fast and across the range. So for the UK, faster payments is just the norm for consumers, but also almost 50% of the volume is businesses as well. So people have really got used to having access to that real-time infrastructure and the characteristics that go with it in terms of it being available 24/7. It's just now embedded in the economy. So I think it's been a good flag bearer for real-time payment platforms. And then around the world, you know, there are probably not any regions where a modernization program isn't either complete, such in the US or Singapore or Thailand, where we've been directly involved, or underway or in planning. So it's a trend that's happening everywhere. I think we tend to narrow down a little bit more than we should what's actually happening in terms of the payment systems by just referring it to real time. I prefer to kind of think of it as payment modernization. And when you put that mindset to it, then you think about what else can you achieve rather than just moving the money in real time. Regulators might drive real time to just so people can move their money faster, but modernization, I think, is a different way to think about it. So in Thailand, for example, there's a real-time infrastructure in place, but also there's request to pay, and also the build out of a very sophisticated proxy service that allows people to access and use the payment system in a really instinctive and easy way. So using a mobile phone number to direct a payment or a national ID to direct a payment. And then if I think about the US, where the modernization program hasn't just been about moving towards real time, it's been about delivering additional value from that payments infrastructure. There's a whole range of non-payment messages, such as, you know, again, request for pay, request for information, notifications. They put a lot of functionality into that core platform, and that's really driving a ton of extra use cases and a ton of extra capability out to the businesses and consumers in that country. So real time might be the term usually applied, but if you just move to real time and you don't take the advantage to modernize and deliver additional value, then you may be missing a trick, because you don't do these modernization programs that frequently.
So can you tell me, how has infrastructure moved on and how is it helping restructure the economy?
So again, maybe taking faster payments as a benchmark, all the new systems are ISO 20022. That means that they can start to hit some of those other buttons I talked about in terms of modernization. So not just moving the payment faster, but also transporting the data with it. So I think that's an important and consistent trend around the world. Now everyone is adopting the value of that. I think we need to make sure that we're careful that when we use those standards, we don't kind of put kind of payment system operator think on it and say, well, I don't need all that data, I just need these 3 fields to process the payment. But we think about the system as really transporting that additional value in the highly secure and highly scalable way. So I think that's important, because that will drive greater value for the end users of that system in terms of the information that flows with the payment, the ability to build and develop new products and services. For Thailand, really in terms of a driver there was really around financial inclusion and driving greater utilization of electronic payments. So, you know, a country which is heavily banked, you know, good bank account penetration, so they don't have some of the financial inclusion challenges that other areas use, but very heavy cash usage. So just making the system easier to use, more efficient to use, moving the money in real time is the equivalent of cash, and then also the government's use of that. So Thailand specifically, benefits are distributed through the system using a national ID number, means that people are starting to get used to receiving that money electronically and bring all the benefits that come with that in terms of tracking and tracing, security, money being in bank accounts and protected with interest, etc. So I think, and then the other aspects I kind of consider are probably, you know, closer to home. When faster payments first went in, there's a real view that it was primarily a consumer proposition. That point I made earlier around almost 50% of the volume being for businesses. businesses are now used to being able to manage their payroll, when they want to pay people, on a daily basis or a weekly basis, pay at the point where they really need to move the money, pay on receipt of the goods as well. That's quite transformational in terms of the flow of liquidity around the economy, and also back to those ISO standards. As on a panel with Jan Pilbar from Payments Canada, he said that they'd estimated that the value to the Canadian economy of moving to those ISO standards was 3 to 4 billion in terms of efficiencies and savings. So these are mega opportunities, so they're really transformational for economies.
Fantastic. And now, George, I'd love to hear your outlook for the next 5 years in this space. What do you think we can expect to see?
So I think that wave of modernisation will continue. I think the new things we'll start to see, one of which I hope for, because there seem to be some opposing philosophies on this. I think those new payment platforms and the modernisation programs should focus on having a much richer payments platform at the centre. That is not in direct opposition to, but there is also philosophy that payment system should be very lightweight and just manage a credit transfer. I think this model is a better one for driving network benefits, so that's what they're doing in the US. I think we'll push hard to make sure that's considered in other markets that we're involved in as well. I think the other trend we'll see is starting to think about, as we modernise these platforms and we have the ability to move money in a split second in one territory, why can't we extend that same functionality cross-border? And what are the glue components that need to sit in between those national payments infrastructure? There's a real ambition for the people operating those to make them really effective endpoints in a global network. And certainly the work we're doing within Vocalink and within MasterCard, we have some of those glue components as well. So, Vocalink, very strong pedigree in terms of building those domestic infrastructures. MasterCard, a global organization that deals with cross-border around the world already, and trying to bring those assets together to support, our customers and the banks and the communities that use them, I think could be very powerful. So I think instant cross-border payments is a reality very soon.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your insights. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for watching.